know who Anthony Fauci is, consider yourself extremely lucky. Unless you were living under a rock in 2020 or 2021, he was basically the guy that everybody listened to, that everybody went to for information on COVID.
This is a vaccine that works, and it only requires one dose.
He was called to testify in front of Congress, and it didn't go very well. But before we go over that video, I want to show you a couple of things that he said in 2020 and 2021.
You might have virus in your nasopharynx, and even though you really feel well, you could inadvertently pass it on to someone else. It is very unlikely that a vaccinated person, even if there's a breakthrough infection, would transmit it to someone else.
If you're vaccinated, you really don't need to worry about getting it in a way that's serious or transmitting it.
You nailed it, Chris. That's correct. Okay. That's absolutely correct. You're absolutely right. You said it correctly. The risk is extremely low of getting infected, of getting sick, or of transmitting it to anybody else. You should care, because if you get infected and you're not vaccinated, there is a chance, maybe a likelihood, that you will be part of the dynamics of the continuation of the chain of transmission. Namely, you will inadvertently or innocently transmit it to someone else, who will then transmit it to someone else. And I don't think anyone would intentionally want to be part of the transmission chain. You want to be a dead end to the virus. So when the virus gets to you, you stop it. You don't allow it to use you as the stepping stone to the next person. Vaccinated people are clearly capable of transmitting the infection to an uninfected person.
Well, look at that. What a full circle moment that was. From you need to get the shot because you won't transmit it to you still can transmit it. And don't forget, at that time, a lot of people were being attacked and deplatformed and called crazy because they were unwilling to get the vaccine.
You are the problem. It is the unvaccinated who are the problem, period, end of story.
The only people that you can blame, this isn't shaming, this is the truth. Maybe they should be shamed, are the unvaccinated.
It's time to start blaming the unvaccinated folks, not the regular folks.
Anyone you came into contact with will blame you, as will the rest of us who have done the right thing by getting vaccinated.
Because frankly, we know that we can't trust the unvaccinated.
I think it's time to get our moral house in order, Anderson. It's the unvaccinated who are the threat.
All those vaccinated folks are going to start wearing masks to protect the unvaccinated folks. It's called a Christian value.
You're basically punishing the vaccinated for the sins of the unvaccinated.
People are not behaving honorably. The unvaccinated are basically saying, well, it's open season for me. I can do whatever I want as well.
Then you also had people like Joe Rogan who were getting it and then were able to get over it without having the shot. CNN didn't like that. And they did this to Joe Rogan.
And it turns out I got COVID. So we immediately threw the kitchen sink at it. All kinds of meds, monoclonal antibodies, ivermectin, Z-Pak, prednisone.
And if you remember, ivermectin was called a horse dewormer, even though that ivermectin was made for humans as well.
Horses, medicine for cows. But the Mississippi Poison Control Center has been pelted with calls from people taking ivermectin in a dangerous attempt to dodge COVID. And officials say 70% obtained the drug from animal supplies. 2 people hospitalized.
Why in the world would an individual would want to take a medication for livestock?
Officials say most of the reported cases have not been too serious, but they warn taking a dose intended for a 1,000-pound animal could lead to overdose, to seizures, coma, and even death. The FDA tweeting, "You are not a horse, you are not a cow. Seriously, y'all, stop it."
Let me just say very clearly that ivermectin is not a recommended treatment for COVID-19. It is not a recommended drug to prevent COVID-19.
It really makes you question, did the news make a mistake? Did Fauci make a mistake? Or was Fauci in on the lie the whole time and the news just decided to join as well? Was this a big plot to force everybody to get a shot? And if it was, why would they want everyone to get vaccinated? Was there something in the vaccine? It gets better, because Fauci then says this in 2021 as well.
when people are vaccinated, they can feel safe that they are not going to get infected. I got infected about 2 weeks ago. It was my third infection, and I had been vaccinated and boosted a total of 6 times.
And you wonder why people didn't trust the science behind this. I remember just asking questions and saying, hey, some of these things don't make sense. And people would jump down your throats on social media. If this virus could take me out, a healthy young man, military-age fighting man with a healthy immune system, never had any previous conditions of any kind, outside of minor things like catching the flu, breaking a bone here and there, spraining my ankle, things like that. If this virus could take me out, then we're all doomed anyways. So Anthony Fauci was called in front of Congress to testify. And what happens next is pretty extraordinary, especially because he's been pardoned, so he can't really get in trouble for anything that he says.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Well, nothing says honesty like taking the fifth, huh, Doc? Let's try something. What day of the week is it today?
On the advice of counsel, I respectfully decline to answer based upon my rights under the Fifth Amendment to the Constitution.
What color tie are you wearing?
On the advice of counsel, I respectfully decline to answer based upon my rights under the Fifth Amendment to the Constitution.
What color's the carpet in front of you?
On the advice of counsel, I respectfully decline to answer based upon my rights under the Fifth Amendment to the Constitution.
Let's just get one thing straight. You don't have any rights under the Fifth Amendment because you've been pardoned, as you very well know. As the Supreme Court has been clear for a century and more, Brown versus Walker, 1896, when he has been pardoned, he may not stand upon his privilege. You know that. Your lawyers sitting behind you now shifting nervously in their chairs. They know it. This isn't about the Constitution. This isn't about the law. This is about contempt. Contempt for this body and contempt for the American people. But I think I know why you're doing it. It's because you don't want to answer questions. It's because you did all kinds of terrible things. It's because during the pandemic, you got rich, didn't you? You got rich. While people were dying, hundreds of thousands of Americans, over 1 million in the end, and you were getting rich, and not only were you doing that, you were using federal employees with taxpayer money to apply for and solicit cash prizes for you personally, cash prizes totaling over $1 million. You did all of that during the pandemic, didn't you? That's a question.
On the advice of counsel, I respectfully decline to answer based upon my rights under the Fifth Amendment to the Constitution.
You would think that somebody who's already been pardoned would be willing to answer the questions he's being asked, which is quite ironic because in 2021, he said this about testifying in front of Congress.
The answer is, if there are oversight hearings, I absolutely will cooperate fully and testify before the Congress if asked. You may not know, but I've testified before the Congress a few hundred times, okay, over the last 40 years or so. So I have no trouble testifying. We can defend and explain and stand by everything that we've said. So I have nothing. Under the advice of my attorneys, I will invoke my right under the Fifth Amendment of the Constitution to refrain from answering your questions. Thank you.
I'm curious, what changed? There's also a phone call of Fauci, which was recorded, and this is what he said.
You were going to have schools, universities, and colleges are going to say, you want to come to this college, buddy? You're going to get vaccinated. Lady, you're going to get vaccinated. Big corporations like Amazon and Facebook and all of those others are going to say, you want to work for us, you get vaccinated. And it's been proven that when you make it difficult for people in their lives, they lose their ideological bullshit and they get vaccinated.
Thank you. Are all objections to COVID vaccinations ideological bullshit, Dr. Fauci?
No, they're not, and that's not what I was referring to.
Well, that's exactly what you meant when you said making it hard for people to live without getting a vaccination. You affected people's ability to work, travel, be educated, to actually flourish in American society, to self-determine, as we're all given God-given rights. Shame on you.
Even though this is quite wild, it's purely performative. Nothing is going to happen. The only way we really fix this issue that we have in our country, where you have politicians and people who are connected to the government lie about things and then nothing happens is to hold them accountable for the things that they do.
Should lock them up.
Oh, man.
Lock them up.
Bill Maher had a few choice words as well for Fauci.
The other thing is, releasing the diary, it is the most embarrassing public releasing of anything since Anthony Weiner put out a picture of his... this dick next to a baby, and like he's just so susceptible to flattery. And for the people who say, you know, Trump, you know, he just lives by people kissing his ass. I got some of the Fauci, this is from Fauci's diary. Fauci, the nurses went absolutely wild to see me. They were squealing and laughing and clapping. It was something to behold. Fauci, many print profiles and features on me. Ridiculous, too many to count. Fauci, I'm such a valued spokesperson and a good communicator. This kind of stuff is dangerous because he was having his ass kissed by one side in the debate, and I think he made decisions based on that.
Lastly, if you remember at that time, Kyrie Irving was one of those guys who was pretty much canceled because he said he wasn't going to take the vaccine. Stephen A. Smith came out and said this, which I completely agree with him.
But there were others who had the courage to say, bump that.
Right.
One of those people at the forefront was Kyrie Irving. I bring his name up because I had my issues with him from a leadership standpoint. Never as a player, because he's sensational. But with him, in terms of leadership. And I didn't look at it as being courageous. I looked at it as being selfish. And I watched Dr. Fauci on Capitol Hill yesterday. And the person I thought about most was Kyrie Irving. Kyrie Irving stood out in my mind because of the heat that he was taking. And how folks were piling on because that was just the latest transgression in their eyes that he was committing and subjecting the public to. He refused the vaccine. New York City's mandate made him ineligible for home games, and he linked his stance to people losing jobs over vaccine mandates. In my opinion, particularly hindsight-wise, it didn't make him stubborn or selfish.
What did it make?
It made him brave. His willingness to stand up and say, nah, I'm not doing that.
Nurses were losing their jobs. People in the military were forced to retire or take the shot. People on social media were ostracized. They were called all kinds of names for not believing in the science. If there's anything that we should all learn from this experience, is to never blindly just trust, because there's always a narrative behind the scenes that you can't always see at first, but will always come to life as long as you dig deep enough or you give it enough time. I'm not necessarily mad at the folks who immediately jump to the conclusion that if you don't get a vaccine, you're going to be hurting your loved ones. But I think they do have some culpability for just immediately willing to go with the narrative that was presented to them, not doing their own research, not looking into things on their own. I don't know what you think about this. Make sure you like, share, subscribe, and until next time.